Good day, friends. Today we face a question that pierces the soul. Why is the heart of a narcissist so cold? Why does someone so full of themselves seem so empty inside? Why does their charm often mask cruelty? Why does their success leave behind broken people rather than blessed ones? A narcissist survives by wearing a mask. It's not just a habit, it's their entire way of being. From the moment they walk into a room, they are performing. They project charm, confidence, and sometimes even compassion, but underneath it all, it's a carefully constructed illusion. Their image is everything, and they will protect it at all costs. To them, being perceived as strong, successful, or admirable is more valuable than actually being any of those things in truth. The mask becomes their identity, and without it, they fear they are nothing. This is why narcissists can seem so engaging at first. They know how to read people, they know what to say, how to act, and how to appear deeply interested in others, but it's not connection they're after, it's admiration. They want to be liked, respected, envied, and if they sense that you're beginning to see through the facade, they will either discard you or double down on the performance. Vulnerability terrifies them because it threatens the illusion. They can't let their real self be seen because the real self is fragile, insecure, and unsure, so they hide it behind a wall of perfection. The mask also serves another purpose, protection. Most narcissists have learned somewhere in life that who they are isn't enough. Maybe they were wounded. Maybe they were neglected. Maybe they were taught that love had to be earned, not freely given. So they developed a persona that seemed more lovable, more impressive, more valuable than who they really are. Over time, they forgot how to take that mask off, and when you forget who you really are, the heart starts to harden. You become emotionally detached because everything becomes about maintaining the image. You stop feeling, stop caring, and start calculating. Their warmth, then, is not genuine. It is selective. It comes out when it serves a purpose, when it gets them praise, attention, or control. This is why people who fall for a narcissist often describe a kind of emotional whiplash. One day they're kind and generous, the next they're cold and cruel. It's not random, it's strategic. Every gesture is filtered through the lens of image management. If being nice helps their appearance, they'll be nice. If being cruel asserts power or dominance, they'll be cruel. But nothing comes from a place of real emotional connection. What makes this so devastating is that people around them often fall in love with the mask, not realizing the person underneath. It may be incapable of true intimacy. That mask can be beautiful, inspiring, even magnetic. But the more you get to know a narcissist, the more you begin to sense the hollowness behind the charm. It's not that they can't act loving, it's that they don't know how to truly love without conditions or ego. And so the mask stays on, the show continues, and the heart, buried beneath layers of self, deception, and fear, grows colder still, because in the end the mask may win the crowd, but it loses the soul. Empathy is the bridge between hearts. It's what allows us to feel another person's joy, sorrow, or struggle as if it were our own. But for the narcissist, that bridge is broken, or perhaps never built at all. They don't speak the language of empathy. They observe emotions, but they don't truly connect with them. They may recognize your pain, but they remain unmoved by it unless it somehow affects them directly. It's not that they can't see it. It's that they won't allow themselves to be changed by it. To the narcissist, emotions are tools. Your sadness might be something they use to manipulate you. Your excitement might be something they try to outshine. Even your vulnerability can become a weapon in their hands, not to protect you, but to control you. This lack of empathy is what makes their heart so cold, because when you can't feel for others, you stop seeing them as people, you start seeing them as objects, as functions in your story, as props in your performance. And when that happens, cruelty becomes easy, indifference becomes second nature. This is why conversations with a narcissist often feel one-sided. You can pour your heart out, speak your truth, explain your feelings with clarity and hope, and they will look at you with blank eyes or respond with defensiveness, blame, or even mockery. You begin to wonder if you're crazy. You begin to doubt your own reality, because someone who truly cared would respond with concern, with warmth, with a desire to make things right. But the narcissist doesn't process emotions that way. They don't feel your hurt, they only evaluate how your hurt affects their control. Sometimes they'll mimic empathy, they'll say the right words, they'll put on the face of concern, but if you watch closely, it doesn't last. The moment the spotlight shifts away from them, the act ends. Their concern evaporates, because it was never about you. It was about protecting their image. That's why they can apologize but never change. Why they can promise love but never truly deliver it. Because love requires empathy, and empathy requires selflessness, a word the narcissist barely understands. This absence of empathy also explains their inability to take responsibility. They don't see how their actions affect others, only how others' reactions affect them. If you're hurt by something they did, they'll blame you for being too sensitive. If you confront them with truth, they'll accuse you of betrayal. They are emotionally blind, and anyone who tries to show them the mirror becomes a threat. Their heart is cold because it's closed, not just to others, but even to themselves. You cannot force empathy into someone who has rejected it. You can't teach someone to care if they've decided that caring makes them weak. The best thing you can do is recognize the absence of empathy for what it is, a deep fracture in the soul, and then protect your own heart, so it doesn't become cold in response. Because even when love is one-sided, your ability to feel is a gift, and theirs a loss they may never fully understand. Pride, arrogance, superiority, these are the traits we often associate with narcissists. But what many people don't realize is that beneath all of that bluster lies something much smaller, much quieter, and far more painful: insecurity. The narcissist's heart is cold not because they are truly confident, but because they are deeply afraid. Afraid of being exposed, afraid of being ordinary, afraid of being unworthy. Their arrogance is not a reflection of strength. It is a shield forged from fear. The narcissist didn't wake up one day and decide to be heartless. Somewhere in their life, often in childhood, they received the message that who they were wasn't enough. Maybe they were praised only for achievements. Maybe they were ridiculed for weakness. Maybe they were ignored, overlooked, or emotionally abandoned. So they began to build a false self, a version of themselves they thought the world would accept, and in doing so, they disconnected from their true self. The vulnerable, insecure part of them, they decided, must stay hidden. That insecurity never truly leaves them. Instead, it festers underneath a carefully polished surface. On the outside, they may seem bold, decisive, even dominant. But inside, they are terrified of being rejected, embarrassed, or irrelevant. This is why narcissists overreact to criticism, why they become enraged when confronted with their flaws, because deep down your honesty threatens the fragile sense of identity they've constructed. They don't hear your words as feedback, they hear them as a threat to their survival. And so they double down on their image, they speak over others, they inflate their accomplishments, they name, drop, exaggerate, and dominate conversations, because if they can convince you that they're important, maybe they can convince themselves. But no matter how loud they speak, that inner voice of self, doubt keeps whispering, "You're not enough." That's why they need constant validation, why they surround themselves with people who admire but never challenge them. Because, without applause, they feel like they're disappearing. Their coldness is a defense mechanism. Warmth requires vulnerability, and vulnerability is dangerous to someone whose entire identity is built on control and image. To show empathy, to apologize, to admit failure, all of that would mean acknowledging their own brokenness, and that is something they simply cannot do. So they stay behind the wall, safe, superior, and alone. But the real tragedy is this: the narcissist's heart is not cold by nature, it's cold by choice. It's a protective ice that formed around wounds they refused to face. And until they deal with the fear at the center of their pride, they will continue to push people away, even as they crave connection. The next time you see someone who seems untouchable, remember, true confidence doesn't need to scream. It doesn't need to prove, and it certainly doesn't need to make others feel small. The narcissist's arrogance is not power, it's pain wearing a crown, and behind the crown is a heart that has never truly healed. Control is everything to a narcissist. It's their comfort zone, their security blanket, and the lens through which they view every relationship. They don't love like most people do. They don't bond through trust, vulnerability, or mutual respect. Instead, they attach through dominance, manipulation, and power. Their heart is cold because it doesn't seek connection. It seeks command. To the narcissist, control is not just a habit, it's a necessity. Without it, they feel exposed, vulnerable, and deeply anxious, so they work tirelessly to create environments where they always have the upper hand. That control can come in many forms, through words, through silence, through charm, or even through chaos. Whatever it takes to keep you uncertain, off balance, and dependent on them. This is why narcissists are often skilled manipulators. They know how to say exactly what you want to hear, how to turn a conversation around to make you feel guilty, how to pretend to be the victim even when they're the one causing harm. They twist facts, deny reality, and rewrite history, not because they don't know the truth, but because the truth would strip away their control, and to them that's unacceptable. They use emotional tactics like gaslighting, stonewalling, love, bombing, and devaluation to keep people in line. When you do what they want, they reward you with affection, attention, even admiration. But the moment you question them, set a boundary, or try to assert your own voice, they withdraw, punish, or lash out. It's a cycle of conditioning where your emotional needs are placed on a leash, and they hold the leash in their hand. Over time, this pattern erodes your self-esteem. You begin to feel like you're always walking on eggshells. You're constantly wondering what version of them you'll get today, the charming one or the cold one. That unpredictability is not random, it's by design, because if you're always trying to please them, always trying to avoid conflict, you're easier to control. Your confusion becomes their power, and make no mistake, narcissists enjoy control. It feeds their ego, it gives them a sense of superiority, but beneath that cold heart is a person who is terrified of being powerless. Their need to control others comes from a deep fear that they cannot control themselves. That fear drives them to micromanage, to dominate, and to manipulate everyone around them, because in their mind, if they're not in control, they're nothing. But here's the painful truth. Real love doesn't demand control. It doesn't need to dominate. Love listens, gives space, honors individuality. A heart that truly loves doesn't fear someone else's strength. It celebrates it. The narcissist's heart is cold because it has traded the warmth of partnership for the illusion of power, and in doing so, they lose the very thing they crave most, genuine connection. If you've been caught in their control, hear this: you are not crazy and you are not weak. You've simply been used by someone who fears losing their grip. But freedom begins the moment you realize their control only works if you give them permission to hold it. To a narcissist, love is not a bond, It's a battlefield. They don't see love as something mutual, tender, or sacrificial. Instead, they confuse love with power. The very concept of love becomes distorted in their mind, reshaped into something that serves them rather than something they give. They don't ask, "How can I love you better?" Instead, they ask, "What do I gain from you loving me?" Their heart is cold because it no longer beats to connect, it beats to conquer. Love, for most people, means vulnerability, trust, and the willingness to put someone else's needs ahead of your own. But to the narcissist, that's weakness. In their world, relationships are ranked. Someone must be on top, and someone must be beneath. It's not about harmony, it's about hierarchy. They need to win, and you need to lose, because if they're not in control, they feel exposed. And exposure is terrifying to them. That's why, when a narcissist says, "I love you," it often means "I own you." It means you now belong to their emotional system, where your value is tied to how well you make them feel, how much you admire them, how little you challenge them. If you serve their needs, you're praised. If you assert your own, you're punished. Their version of love is conditional, full of strings, tests, and unspoken rules that always lead back to them being in charge. They turn intimacy into a performance. Every gesture of affection is calculated. Every compliment, every romantic moment is used to gain trust. And once they have it, they begin to shift the balance of power. Love becomes a tool of control, and over time you stop feeling safe. You start doubting yourself, because their love doesn't warm you. It freezes you in place, makes you smaller, weaker, quieter. Even worse, the narcissist resents your strength. If you're confident, they'll try to dim your light. If you're independent, they'll guilt you into submission. They believe that love means you revolve around them, and if you refuse, they feel betrayed. Why? Because your refusal challenges their belief that love equals control. And for a narcissist, control is love. That's the lie they live by. But true love doesn't play power games. It doesn't keep score. It doesn't punish or dominate. Love leads, but it doesn't lord. It sacrifices without needing applause. It holds space without needing control. The narcissist's cold heart can't grasp this kind of love because it demands something they fear the most: humility. To love purely, they would have to surrender their pride, acknowledge their flaws, and risk being truly seen. And that's a price many of them are unwilling to pay. So they remain locked in their version of love. A love that binds instead of frees, a love that drains instead of fills. And while they may gain control, they lose intimacy. They may win the power, but they miss the presence, because love that seeks to overpower is not love at all. It's domination in disguise. And domination can never warm a heart. It only hardens it further. One of the hardest truths to accept is this: you cannot fix a narcissist. No matter how deeply you love them, how patiently you try to understand them, how much of yourself you pour out, you will never be enough to heal someone who doesn't believe they're broken. Their heart is cold, and that coldness is not accidental. It's chosen, protected, and justified in their own mind. And if you continue trying to thaw it with your warmth, you'll eventually freeze too. Narcissists don't change because they don't take responsibility. They don't reflect, they don't repent. Every confrontation becomes a deflection. Every truth you bring is twisted until you question your own reality, and that's by design. If they admit fault, they lose control. If they apologize sincerely, they admit weakness. But their entire identity is built on the illusion of superiority and control. So instead of changing, they shift blame, they point the finger at you. They make you feel like the toxic one, and in trying to help them, many people lose themselves. You start out wanting to be a light in their darkness, but before long you feel dimmed, you second, guess your words, your needs, your instinct. You become smaller in the name of peace, quieter in the name of love. But true love doesn't require you to disappear. True love doesn't demand that you betray your own soul just to keep someone else comfortable. Here's the truth: healing is a personal decision. You cannot drag someone into self-awareness. You cannot make them value what they've decided to dismiss. You can offer truth, you can offer grace, but you can't force growth. That's not your burden to carry. What is your responsibility? Protecting your heart, preserving your peace, setting boundaries that keep you emotionally and spiritually healthy. And sometimes the most powerful boundary is distance. Distance doesn't mean hate. It doesn't mean revenge or bitterness. It means choosing sanity over chaos. It means recognizing that some people are committed to their dysfunction, and if you stay too close, you'll get caught in the fire. It's not selfish to step away from someone who constantly hurts you. It's wise. It's not unloving to walk away from someone who refuses to change. It's courageous. So if you've been trapped in the orbit of a narcissist, if you've tried, pleaded, cried, and broken yourself to reach them, let this truth set you free. It's not your job to save them. You were never meant to carry the weight of someone else's transformation. That's between them and God, them and truth, them and their own conscience. Your job is to heal, to rise, to reclaim the parts of yourself that got lost in the storm, because you deserve more than cold love. You deserve more than one-sided devotion. You deserve real, warm, mutual connection, and it begins the moment you stop chasing a heart that chooses to stay cold and start honoring the one that's still beating inside you.